Welcome to the Hartwell Studio Work Sports Branding Podcast. My name is John Hartwell, and I am the brains and pencil behind Hartwell Studio Works. I'm a sports brand designer in Atlanta, Georgia. Over the last 18 months, I think it is fair to say that there have been two major earth-shifting events impacting collegiate athletics. The first is the coronavirus pandemic, and the second is the advent of the name, image, and likeness era, or NIL. The majority of NIL attention has obviously been on the D1 Power 5 level, but that does not mean that there are not NIL ramifications for small colleges. Joining me to talk about some of these ramifications is Meighan Julbert, the Assistant Athletic Director for Student Athlete Success and the SWA at Bethany College in Bethany, West Virginia. Meighan, thanks so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So Meighan, let's get started by having you tell us just a little bit about your career in college athletics. Give us a little background and what is your role for students athlete success at Bethany?
Definitely. So I'll go back a little bit, but keep it brief. I did my undergrad at Auburn. So was at one of those larger Division I institutions. Worked at the men's basketball team and then in the athletic director's office as well while I was there. I got my grad degree in sports psychology and motor behavior at Tennessee, where I had the opportunity to coach some on the side in the community, but also work with the men's golf team. And then after that, I worked at a private practice, practicing sports psychology for a little under 5 years, and then landed here in the middle of Bethany, West Virginia, where as you mentioned, at Bethany College. And I've been here for about a little over 2 years. The position was originally funded through the Division III Ethnic Minorities and Women's Internship Grant, and just recently became a full-time, it felt full-time before, I'll be real with you, but a full-time position this year. So that's been exciting. And obviously I've had a little bit of a different experience. Obviously those Division I experiences, while I was in my private practice, I worked with some smaller Division III schools. I was in Birmingham, Alabama, worked with a couple Division II, some professional athletes, and the Division I level. So I've been a little all over when it comes to, we'll just say, clientele that I've worked with.
Sure.
And that's kind of what brought me here to Bethany. In my current role, I tell recruits all the time, I do a little bit of everything. Anything that it takes to help our student athletes be successful, that's my job. So I run our Bison 360 program, which is just a catchy way to say we develop total scholar athletes. I help connect our students from an academic perspective across campus to our partners. I help with the sports psychology, obviously, mental health perspective of things, leadership development, student athlete development, and the career side of things as well, which is a little bit about why the NIL, everything that's happening, in the last several months, but even prior to that is kind of a little bit up my alley, at least from a student athlete development perspective.
Okay, very good. So let's just start with the great big honking $65,000 question here. Why does NIL matter to small colleges?
Ooh, yeah, so my first experience even hearing of NIL, I was at the 2020 National Convention in California. And I remember sitting in the business meeting and it got brought up, and I was there because, professional development opportunity, right? And we had money we had to spend, and why not go to California? So I was
Excellent
sitting
reason.
there, exactly, right? You gotta spend it on something. So that's a good reason to spend it. But anyway, so I heard it, it was brought up, there were discussions about it. I listened to individuals get up and speak so passionately, and I thought to myself, whoa, this is not going to affect us. I mean, I've been there 6 months and I could already tell you, I don't know where this is going to fall, but I can't imagine our student athletes, benefiting from this, let alone any of our staff having to deal with, the challenges and the repercussions that may happen if anything pushed forward. And then, ironically enough, we know where everything stands now, right?
Mm-hmm.
A couple months ago, I was speaking with our RAD and myself. We were speaking with a representative from the NCAA office, and we were just talking about, what steps should we take, right? Well, what should we be doing? We had just undergone a transition from the leadership in our athletic director. We were obviously headed into some unknown, territory, but specifically with the NIL policy. And so the one comment that he made was, if you think Division III institutions are not going to be impacted by this, you are far, far out there. That is absolutely, you will 100% be impacted. And oddly enough, before we could even put together a policy, we already had a student athlete who was engaging in these conversations. And that was something that I think, while can be an exciting thing, can also be a little frightening for a small college, in West Virginia, right?
So, opportunities at the D1 Power 5 student athlete level, pretty impressive. Personalized logos, national endorsement deals, paid appearances, all that sort of stuff. But you said, as you just said, your own student athletes in Little Bethany, West Virginia, were already engaged in these conversations. So can you share a little bit, what are those kinds of NIL opportunities for small college student athletes?
So some of them, the ones that we've at least heard of so far, right? Some of them are, local businesses that from their hometown in their community that have wanted to get into a partnership with a student. Some of them have been like a gear rep, just something as simple as we had a student athlete who got into business with someone with bats, baseball bats, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. We haven't had any what you see right all over social media right now. We haven't gotten to that extreme yet. But a lot of it's been exchanging goods, right? A lot of it has been, just representing those, whether they're a small business, whether it's a local tie connection, and they just saw, hey, this could be a really great opportunity for us to spread our business. It's been those kinds of examples that have really just naturally happened, right? And I don't believe that many of our students, they weren't the ones to initiate those conversations, which I think is something that's very interesting. They weren't the ones to initiate those conversations. People were coming to them, as well as we have students who want to, run a camp, right? Things like that, where they can financially benefit from that. But it doesn't seem as large as those other opportunities, but I think a lot of them are still just as valuable.
So while there probably aren't going to be any Instagram campaign launches from Times Square for your average D3 student athlete, it's still just the idea that there is a commerce element attached to this. And as you pointed out, there are businesses coming to your student athletes, not necessarily the other way around. So that adds a whole new dynamic to this. Is that correct?
Yeah, and a responsibility on us to help protect our student athletes. I think that's a large part of it too, help educate them and empower them to, yes, take advantage of these opportunities, but in the right ways, in the ways that will protect them from challenges that they would face in such unknown territory.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So what have you guys at Bethany done to prepare for NIL?
So we started with speaking to our general counsel. Rewind. That one of the first conversations that we had was with the NCAA office. That jump started us on some steps that we needed to take. We spoke to our campus general counsel about, and luckily we have someone who was well versed in that information, and we developed a policy based on what other institutions were doing. This is not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Lean on other connections that you have and resources that you have, because we're all kind of in that unknown territory together. So we developed that policy. We went through a lot of drafts, a lot of so many different eyes on it, right? Because it was so necessary to make sure that we were headed in the right direction. We worked with our conference office from a disclosure form standpoint. So we've got, that's consistent across the conference. And then we also, one of the things that we tried to implement, we talk all the time about these Power Fives, the larger institutions and what they're experiencing. And I do think that to some extent you can take that value and bring it to a smaller college. It might not be on the same scale, but I do think that there are a lot of the same inner workings that can apply. And so we developed, some simple do's and don'ts educational opportunities, not just for our students, but for our coaches, for our stakeholders, donors, things like that, right? To make sure that if we're going to, hold these things accountable, then we have to educate them on if you want to be involved, can you first and foremost, right?
Mhm.
But then if you do, what are the most appropriate ways to do that? And I'm hoping that will be also a good, marketing opportunity as well, and a good opportunity to have multiple touch points, with other stakeholders that are involved as well. But following that, once we developed that, then it was time to let's share this with our student athletes. And so we had, appropriately so, because we're still dealing with COVID, we had a meeting with all of our student athletes. We've been having, discussions with our coaches. That happened first and foremost. And then we had this meeting, and in this meeting, it was myself and our director of compliance. We're working together on it, me from an educational side, and then her from the, the compliance aspect of it. And so we were transparent, and we said, look, this is really unknown territory. This is why we've developed, we provided why we've developed what we have, why these rules are in place, why we are doing these things to support you, not just, limit you on what opportunities are available. And I thought that was a great discussion. I think, we had several students who came up to us afterwards and said, oh yeah, hey, I've been doing this. What do you think about this? What, do I need to disclose this? Right. And that was exciting, because we got to touch base with them and connect with them, I think, on a different level, right? Just by providing the opportunity for that dialogue.
So what do you see then as, you talked about the opportunities for these small college student athletics, and for all the prep work that you've done as a program, as a conference, you used the phrase that, you guys have a responsibility to protect these students because they don't know what they don't know, kind of a thing. So what are some of those specific concerns that you see for small college athletes? What are some of the pitfalls and the traps that they might not know are out there?
I think there are a lot of worries that probably keep our, director of compliance up at night. I'll say that first and foremost. And
Sure.
even though we expect it to be ugly, I think that there are definitely those concerns that we're trying to address up front and be proactive about them. One that we've been discussing is from a tax standpoint, from having the ability to, I know it's very popular right now all over social media about our international students. We have a significant number of international students, and we have, it's a priority for us, even going through compliance paperwork, set NIL aside. It's a priority for us to make sure that they're understanding what our expectations are of them, right? And what is needed of them. But then you throw this in, and we look at, are we really, I guess if we talk about the Division III model, equal, fair, across the board, right? Is that happening right now? And not just right now, but how's that going to be developed and move forward from a visa standpoint? So that's something I worry about our international students. We haven't run into any major issues yet, but we want to make sure we're protecting them. I also worry about representation, right? So if you look at the last 18 months and trying to ensure that we're providing equitable, equal opportunities for education, for access to resources, does this, what does this look like as we move forward? Are we not only, I know there are certain things that we can't control, right? But are we providing those opportunities in an equal, equitable way? That's something that I know we've been having a lot of discussions about, and I'll be completely transparent. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know the answer to it. But it's certainly something that has to remain a priority, because if it doesn't remain a priority, then we will be a year, 2 years down the road looking back and saying, did we do this the right way? Were we looking at serving our students first and foremost, or were we taking a back seat when it came to those issues? And then another thing that we try to address, obviously, we're not going to have anyone. Casinos are really big around here. And that's obviously something that we can't get in, a student would not be able to get into business with. However, helping our students make sure that who they are connecting with, who they're working with, who they are trying to create partnerships with, whether that's for straight cash or if it's for goods, right? And I'll just be blunt in that. That it's something that they feel as if represents them in the right way, but also does not put them in a dangerous position. So those are the things, it's exciting. And when anything's new and flashy and exciting, you jump on it. And one of the things that we shared with our student athletes was that we fully support you in this. This is a fantastic, incredible, scary opportunity, right? But our fears of, are we doing it the right way? I don't want that to be a limitation for your access to those opportunities. However, we still have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in protecting you, your image, your future, and not only as an athlete and your eligibility, but then also as a human being, because that's where we start.
So I think some of what you touched on there actually segues quite well into my next question here, because this is a branding podcast. And so we need to touch specifically on some branding here. And these opportunities, I mean, name, image, and likeness, these have a branding component to them, as these student athletes have an opportunity to develop a real personal brand for themselves. What do you see as the brand implications for the small college market? And when I say that, I mean both for the student athlete, but it seems like the program and the institution have there's a branding opportunity and a branding concern here for the program and the institution as well. What do you guys see in regards to that kind of issue?
I think it's not a new issue. As social media has grown, all of our student athletes, whether they're at a large institution, small institution, Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, regardless, the brand, that who they put out on social media, who they put, the things that they say, right? Things that we say. It's a personal brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it impacts the perception that people have of you on campus, but it also impacts the perception for future careers. And part of as working within student athlete development, I'm not just about finding success while we're on campus. We need to find success through graduation, find success, following graduation in their careers, right? And that goes for our coaches, that goes for our graduate assistants, that goes for our, undergraduate student athletes. And this just throws, another layer into that. So I don't think it's a challenge that hasn't previously existed. How we educate and empower our students to utilize their voices through social media, through branding, through imagery, right? And is that being true to who they are, right? But is that also putting out an image that 5 years down the road, that, tomorrow, right? What is that saying about that individual? What is that saying about that college? Because oftentimes what we see is what we promote is what people often think we support fully. And the challenge is that I have mixed feelings on it, right? But the perception then becomes that that's who you are, right? So it is just as important. I think the branding aspect of it, who you are creating these partnerships with, who you are creating these deals with, that then will have a perception shift on who you are as a student, as an athlete, as a human being, as a member of this program, as a member of this institution. I think it hasn't been a new problem. It's not new, right? It just adds another layer into the information, and the imagery that we're putting out about ourselves. And I don't think that it just impacts that student athlete. I think it does impact the program. It can impact a coach, right? Can impact the institution. And so, there are certain limitations as far as, obviously, what types of deals and partnerships can be engaged in. However, that's why I think it's so important for us to educate, on the front end, that your voice has power. What you're putting out there has power. And this is a great opportunity for you to use that in a way that supports you as a student, you as a human being.
All of that, I think, is exceptionally well said in regards to what is the nature of branding. And I think what I'm hearing you say is it, at a most fundamental level, it really is about the alignment of values when you're looking both at the school that a recruit is looking to enroll in, to now that same student athlete enrolled in a school looking to make alignments and deals with businesses who will represent him or her and the institution itself. So I think saying that it's just another layer to an already existing process, I think, is very well said.
And I'll even throw in there one thing that I think we don't talk about enough is that it's not going to be pretty. I know we talked a little briefly about that on the front end, but we're humans. We make mistakes. Life is ugly. I mean, how often, and I use social media as an example because it's just an ever-present form of communication in society today, right? But how often does someone put something out there, whether you're a professional athlete, a collegiate student athlete, no matter what division, coach, whatever, how often do we put something out there and then the response that we get, the feedback that we get is that, oh, hey, why did you say that? Or, is that really connecting or aligning with, as you mentioned, your values? So how can we expect this process to be any different? It will be ugly. We will make mistakes. Our students will make mistakes, right? I think we educate and empower them on the front end in order to make sure that happens less often. But we will make mistakes as administrators, as coaches, as athletics departments. And I think that's part of college athletics. That's part of small college athletics. So if we're thinking that we won't make mistakes and that this won't be ugly, we are kidding ourselves. It will, as long as at the core of it, at every decision that we make, we are focusing on the service aspect that, as an administrator, I'm here to serve our coaches, our athletics department, our institution. I'm also here to serve our student athletes. So if we're keeping that at the core of it, then I think we prepare for those mistakes and we manage them as best we can.
So all of that said, let's say there is an AD out there listening to this right now, and they are sweating bullets over NIL. Not quite sure how to proceed. Where do you go? Which way do you turn? Meighan, what's your one silver-plated, brilliant piece of advice for them right now as to how to approach NIL? I know I just put you on the spot.
Definitely did, and I love it. Take a deep breath, take a step back, and then reach out to other institutions, whether that be in your area, whether that be, in your division, just connections that you have, and lean on them. I've been there. I'm there currently. I may seem like I'm calm right here, but I'm telling you, every time someone sends me something from social media and they're like, hey, did this person send this to you? I'm sweating bullets too, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to do it right. We want to do right by our student athletes. However, we are, like I've mentioned probably 12 times, and I will keep saying it, we are in unknown territory, but everyone is together. So one piece, it may sound unconventional. It may sound like, not as straightforward as it should be, but take a deep breath.
We're all making it up
figure it out.
as we go along.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. All right. Well, Meighan, thank you so very much for being with us here today. I really do appreciate you taking time to help me understand a bit of this brave new NIL world. Best of luck to you and to Bethany as you go through the school year. White knuckled maybe just a little bit with every social media post, and I will very much look forward to seeing you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching. You can get in touch with our guest using the information listed here on the screen. You can also find it in the video description below and in the podcast show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and write a review. Help other sports professionals find this podcast. Best of luck in your sports branding efforts, and we'll see you next time.